All right. Good evening, and even more accentuated, good evening in Iceland, where we shall be soon tuning and linking into. I love this idea. I love this connecting to different parts of the world. It makes things smaller. It makes things feel more colorful, and I love it. And I do also account, and I do also want to appreciate every one of the guests that has tuned in from a later time zone. I appreciate that. So I appreciate my guests and having this slight late night today. So for any of you or those of you who've never partook or participated or seen or known, this space is called Tertuliando in Cuarentena, which basically means gathering, entering into dialogue, conversating in quarantine, which is situations that we finding ourselves into for the last 4 to 5 months now. And as I mentioned, so tonight we are connecting from one place to a whole other place into the world. In this particular case, in Iceland, who a place that I have a great sense of appreciation. Maybe is the Icelandic element in me too, being from an island. The Icelandic, maybe not the Icelandic. So tonight I have a good friend of mine coming in from Iceland. So without any further ado, let me see if I can hear the magic button and introduce Kristín Einarsdóttir Mäntylä. Vamos a ver. There we go.
Hi, yes.
Welcome, friend. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm very good. And
Did
you?
I do a relatively decent job at stating your name?
You did. You did. Kristín Einarsdóttir Mäntylä. I'm used to so many different versions of that because it's actually Icelandic and then Finnish also in the end. So you did a very good job, really.
So Mäntylä, is this on your mother's side?
It's on my father's side. He's half Finnish, so my grandfather was from Finland, and we kept that name. So Einarsdóttir, I don't know, do you know that tradition with names?
Yeah, see, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
son and daughter
Exactly.
in Iceland, right?
Exactly. So my dad is his name is Einar, so I'm Einarsdóttir, his his daughter basically.
I think how do you
Yeah.
know do you know how far back that goes, that the that history, because I connected with like Jackson Johnson
Yeah.
um
It's all the
in
way back definitely to the Vikings, and I don't know how far, but they were all, Eriksson, Leifsson, and yeah, that has been going on. We kept
I
that
love
tradition
that.
for a very long. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
I
that.
think
You know,
yeah. So
I
that's why no, that's why our Mäntylä name, our Finnish name, that a little bit is that makes us, I guess, a little bit different. There's not every family in Iceland, at least, that has a family name like that. So it always creates a little bit of conversation, at least.
Oh, that's wonderful, and that's why I asked you if it was your mother's maiden last
Yeah,
name, because for
yeah.
usually in Latin America we use
Yeah,
our father's last name, and then our second last name would be our mother's last name.
which makes
So
sense.
you
That would
kind of
be nice.
honoring both parts. I
Of
remember I
course.
used to
Yeah.
you only use my dad's, and I think it was in a doctor's office. He's like, "Do you not have a mother?
I mean, that's
Do you not
true.
have a
I
mother?"
know.
And
Yeah.
it was in
We
Puerto Rico
don't.
because it was a proper context to use both.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like that. That's I like that. You can actually do that also here in Iceland, but it is still
Ah,
the tradition to do the other way. Yeah, you can be. I could be. My mother is Sigríður, so I could be Sigríður's dóttir, or
ah.
make it some kind of a middle name. Yeah. Maybe you should look into that, but it has still. It is definitely, yeah, more the normal way to have it the other way around.
And I mean, and this is opportunities to, these are conversation pieces because this is part of who we are. It's part of who
Yeah.
you are, part of your history, your lineage, your heritage. So I think that that is a worthy place of conversation and of honoring those who came before you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Indeed.
So that's something we do here. I mean, it's very organic, very spontaneous, but speaking into the present, speaking to our current context, with this pandemic situation, it's something I like to start the conversation with.
Yeah.
How has this situation of pandemia been for you? How has it affected you personally,
Hmm.
professionally?
Yeah.
And also, I understand. I don't know if this pandemic situation caught you in Germany or in Iceland, but maybe you can comment more on that as you
Yeah.
answer. But also get your perspective as to maybe what your observations are that a situation, such a globalized situation, has sociologically brought to surface? Like, what observations have you made as to what this pandemia has maybe brought attention or brought light to? So it's kind of like a three-part question. How have you navigated entering into this time of pandemia 4 or 5
Hmm.
months ago?
Yeah.
Kind of what were you doing then? Then personally, professionally, and then your observations as to society.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do my best to answer that. I was when it started. I was in Germany, and we kind of call it here the first wave, and now maybe the second wave. But I was about to start a new semester in school in Leipzig, in Germany, where I study, and if the semester was just about to start in a few days, maybe a week, where everything just closed down basically. And I was extremely lucky. Like my situation could almost not have been better in the way that, first of all, I am a student still. I'm in doing my master's degree, so it was not like I was losing, and I was not counting on a job at that time. When it happened, I was preparing to be in school, and yeah, I was. I live with my boyfriend in Germany, and there happened a little bit of a scare. Of course, it happened so quickly, and we were watching news from Italy. So and then the Icelandic government also sent out kind of like an announcement to all Icelanders aboard, kind of like you have 1 week if you want to come home.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're kind of not going to be completely locked out, but you kind of had to take a decision. Are you going to come home or to Iceland, which is often relatively a rather safe space, or
Mm-hmm.
kind of take the chance in Germany? And luckily, it really, especially in Leipzig, where I live, it didn't get very bad, but so I felt really safe there. Um, and I used the time. I kind of um, I enjoy the time that I got. Weird to say, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely yeah, and I guess a lot of people feel this also privileged to not we don't have kids or things like that, so it wasn't that whole stressful situation. But it was spring was coming, and I used the time very well actually to take care of myself, something that I've things that I've been pushing away. Went on a lot of walks because we were allowed to go outside. That was not given. Read a lot. I I had this one student that I was still teaching. She has a beautiful garden, so we could stay outside and do social distancing. And so her and her family, I started teaching them singing and Icelandic, and it became a whole new rhythm, and different things we were doing different things, and it was kind of nice, I have to say. And we were also a few Icelanders living in Leipzig, so we had our security net there to be in contact with each other, even though we didn't see each other much. So that was basically when it started, and then actually school started again, and so the semester started a few months later and has been spreading now over a lot of months. There's a lot less lessons, a lot of lessons are online, and we've just been trying to do the best out of the situation. And work-wise, I was supposed to be singing in a production in Dresden in Germany over the summer, and then a few concerts. All of those things, they got canceled. But there's always a good side of the coin, is that gave me a chance then to use my 1 month off to go to Iceland, and I hadn't seen my family for a long time. So I really have to say that I've been extremely, extremely privileged myself, and in a very lucky position, kind of compared to everything. And and musicians, if I would only be trusting on the working part of being a musician, that would definitely hit me a lot harder. But because I have that student status, that has been good.
Many people were quite like especially within the artist world,
Yeah,
it hit quite hard. It hit quite
yeah,
significantly hard because of those
definitely.
cancellations, and then there's
Yeah,
always there's a space of reinventing one's artistic proposal, and there's
yes,
the live stream
100%.
concerts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And that brought kind of like wells of living water, if you want to use a metaphor, to people, as in like they became you see that essential that essential the essential existence of art, of how they can bring healing, how they can communicate in times of despair, some sense of peace for people
yeah,
in whatever the art might be, whether it be singing, whether it be painting, whether it be whatever it might be. And I use the word essential because the essential workers has become a quite a slogan type of in these time of pandemia.
yeah,
Grocery workers, health workers,
yeah,
but people in the art world have also had some sense of essential
yeah.
being as we're locked in our homes. And
Yes, exactly. It is, and also in the field, of music, for example, because I'm in the opera field, and then you're a part of such a big battery, and of one production there's so many people in it, and there's also, depending on, always a live audience, um, and these big productions, I don't know when they're gonna be able to be again, because it's not like you're just yourself and a guitar, and you're kind of be able to. It is so much, and then it's so much acting, and then so much to do with the other ones. So it's really, we also just realizing it's kind of a scary thought when you think that this is for how long that this can be. Yeah, it's kind of here to stay for some time. So we really need to, we, then I say, as singers, I guess, to be creative, and how to and think a little bit differently, out of the form, which is actually also very, very interesting and beautiful, and pushes us to be creative in other fields.
and I think it speaks us to our human nature. And I say this quite uncomfortably, and I say uncomfortably in the sense that I know there is a level of privilege that I'm in. I know there's a level of
Mm.
privilege that some people are in, and some people are going through way more tougher times during these
Yeah,
times.
100%. Yeah,
Um, but to recognize that in these times, like you mentioned before, you are, paraphrasing, not to put words in your mouth, but you're quite grateful for for some spaces that you found yourself in, to maybe
yeah,
cause some reflection and some stuff. And I wanted
yeah.
to ask you, well, if there is maybe one thing or two things you might remember that speaking into specifics, that
Hmm.
you think are are kind of like results or an outcome of these spaces of reflection that you might take away with you, like I'm really grateful for this space of contemplation I've had, that otherwise, that without without things stopping as they stopped. And I think that's why maybe some people have found spaces of reflection, because we're always in such a go, 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 rush, 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 rush,
Exactly.
rush, rush.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is there anything that you can maybe allocate a memory to?
Yeah.
It could be even maybe partly funny, or but just things of that you remember, and that you can, like, as we step out of this place, maybe that you can remember and look back on during these last 4 or 5 months, that you probably really cherish, something that you've maybe added to your arsenal
Yeah.
of educational memories.
Yeah, so much, really. So much. It's going to be difficult just to choose something. I made a habit to go for a walk just alone for 2 hours every day, and that was just and I went then really into the nature, and um, just the feeling and the realization how kind of helpless we are uh, towards nature, and also this, we're constantly in a run kind of, and we are also a little bit um we judge each other, and maybe that's just me and this environment I'm in, on performance, and that's where your identity comes from. And all of a sudden we kind of all became human beings a little bit, and no matter kind of your achievements or whatever, the humanity, I guess, became so strong. And I think it came to me very clearly just in the helplessness, and that feeling that we are all in this together, and we need to be all in this together, no matter maybe from how different we are and things like that. um yeah, and all of this just to be this slowing down. There's really so much that came from that, positive things, really, um, that I really want to be able to take with me into when it speeds up again, which it actually already has started to speed up again, kind of a few months ago, where I was in Germany and now in Iceland. And it is definitely a battle not to fall completely back into to kind of this vision, and to stay and look around actually for a moment. And so that's definitely it's a journey, I guess.
You
Difficult to
mentioned
point out this one thing, yeah.
you mentioned the I'm gathering my I'm trying to allocate in my ADD mind, trying to slow it down.
Yeah,
You mentioned, like judging each other based on performance, and I think,
yeah,
like lately, I've been attempting to problematize that, to say, and add on to that appearances,
yes,
appearances that I might find approving of. And lately, as I've been in these conversations with people, and there's a whole plurality of people that I'm talking with, and also people that have sent me friend requests or that have sent me messages, I get a whole plurality of different, more perspectives, and I take that and take that with me and run with it. I mean, I'm really valuing that, and really trying to
mhm,
deconstruct my ideas of beauty, my
yeah,
ideas, where they come, especially with this whole thing about, with the rising of a Black Lives Matter.
yes,
I think it's really hit things. It is really, I've I felt discomforted, and like to start questioning many things that I thought were very solid ground to stand
exactly,
on.
yeah, exactly. And
How,
where does that come?
what has been your process of reflection? I mean, being in that side of the world, with speaking about Black Lives Matter, what has that kind of provoked over there, Iceland, in Germany. Of course, you're speaking about your own experiences of it.
Yeah. I mean, I just, you know, I talked about privilege in the beginning, how I was in a privileged position in the quarantine, and I guess I feel about myself in this case is I learned a little bit more about what privilege actually is, and things exactly that I take a little bit for granted, that they shouldn't be taken for granted. And I'm definitely with that whole, it was absolutely devastating, that the beginning of the Black Lives Matter, of course. And then it took this curve, and I realized that I had to go through this whole learning process, and that was really, I just needed to take a step back and really look into that, and that was really interesting. And then we're still in a path, but then there was a big demonstration in Leipzig, and that was also so beautiful, because it was all empowering. Is that the right word, when you
Mm-hmm.
get more
Claro,
power?
claro, yes.
Yeah, there's this unity. But it was definitely where I felt like, now I need to sit down and I need to um, gather some information, basically. And I knew that I was privileged both as an Icelander and as a white skinned human being, but I didn't realize how much, kind of. And that's, I guess, my stand of that. And to be constantly aware of that, and yeah, and how much that has helped me, and will always, kind of. It's really, yeah, it's really, really not cool.
Something I open up in a space I open up in these interactions is to allow, he or she or anyone who is sharing in this space to share what they feel are three experiences throughout their life that they acknowledge or that they recognize are experiences of cathartic nature, of transformation, of puzzling this person, this being that we have here before our eyes. And of course, still in the process, still in the making, but in the reflection of looking in hindsight, can you think of at least three experiences, whether they be specific moments or processes you went through, or seasons as we call them in life, that you can point to them and think, yeah, this was cathartic. This particular experience was very cathartic. Like maybe choosing music as your destiny. And as you were playing football, soccer. It's like, so what things can you, Mike, as you reflect on your life a bit, at least three moments, process or whatever, that you feel are
Yeah.
like those forks in the road, perhaps.
um yeah. uh Kind of, I guess the one of them is definitely moving to Germany, and along with that came choosing to study music, if that it will be then my final career, or not, or one of them. But that was definitely a choice that has had a lot of weight on it. It has formed a lot who I am maybe today, and where I am today. So that is definitely one of it. I guess the second one is as a whole experience. I guess that was the tour with Björk, because that just as a life experience, even though maybe it's maybe not was just one moment, but there was definitely also a very unique kind of experience that I would otherwise not necessarily be in. So
Mm-hmm.
those two have definitely changed my life a lot, and put me into certain directions, kind of. Um, and I would say, especially in the experience in Leipzig, there's kind of endless moments without it being necessarily one certain thing. But I guess there is a moment when I was young. I mean, I was 20 years old, and I was actually in Miami, I think, and in the United States for the first time. I was just been there for a few weeks. I was starting the whole tour thing, and I was actually there with my ex-boyfriend, and I was just, until then I had just been going full fart my whole life, kind of, and it had been so exciting, and I was so naively kind of excited and happy about everything, and then everything was just about to start, and then Pam, it's very little to say, it's not, I haven't had a very sheltered life. I have to say that. But then one point, my relationship that I was then in just completely breaks apart, and kind of everything that I believed in was just completely wrong and ripped away, and all of a sudden I was just sitting outside in this place, and I kind of didn't know where to go, and I didn't know the city, and then I didn't know, and all of a sudden just everything that, I guess it was a little bit of a moment of stop being a child, even though I didn't think that I was a child anymore at the time, but just believing so purely in the good and everything and everyone, and all of a sudden being so alone and so lost. That was definitely like a shock. It was nothing very bad or anything, but that was, I just always remember sitting on a bench outside in America for the first time, and not really knowing what to do or where to go. um yeah, take with that with the one, but
You know,
so that was like a moment that always with me, I think. But I think maybe like threshold between the childish experience and then just realizing how the world is a little bit gray,
mhm.
and then those kind of life experiences and everything that has gone on the way with that.
Do you specifically commenting on that last experience you share, and
Mm.
I think when one this is just at least my observation. Everyone's pilgrimage is quite similar because we're all humans, but at the
Yeah,
same time they're so different. Everyone's experience is so complexly different, um, and of course there is a suffering world that is legitimately suffering, and there's people that have suffered a lot, and to suggest otherwise, I think it would be just to basically lie.
yeah,
But as one goes, without feeling the need to enter into a suffering competition or whatever, as one
yeah,
goes through an experience that one experiences pain, or one experiences the lack of, or the abandonment of, it is legitimate. It is a very
yeah,
real,
ex-
legitimate moment of departure, or of
yeah,
losing. Do you, in that specific instance, as you quite vividly remember, because you were not home, you were in the USA for the
yeah,
first time, there's all these
yeah,
elements that make that even more of a, you can even make that into a mythology experience. And what I mean by that is that you obtain meaning by that experience. You have all these elements present there that make it even more memorable, and it becomes a very real story in your life that you can point to. Do you feel that this experience kind of can be a kind of like a before and after an experience?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. After that, I mean, no, yeah, it is, hits you right in the stomach, and after that, I had to kind of go through ups and downs, and then kind of working on that whole experience. But it was such a just realization, kind of how the world goes. It's not, maybe not always fair, and it's, some things happen and doesn't necessarily have to do with anything, and you can't take and not to count on, not expect, you expect maybe something and then it goes completely different, and that's just the how it goes. But until then, maybe everything had been a rather straight line somehow. And I'm not saying not because of that moment, but then has been very interesting years that have just been all kinds, and everywhere, and the line has been unclear maybe, but it's kind of a lot more real because of that. So I guess it is definitely that threshold.
Threshold. See.
Threshold, yeah.
In that instance when we go through, for example, a great moment of example, or a great moment we can use as an example of growth. There's many different thinkers and I would say livers, those people who live truly, that I've quoted, and there are similar quotes that say, without struggle, you don't advance. Without struggle, you
Yeah,
don't move forward.
100%.
And
Yeah,
this is, I don't think it's a call to masochism. I don't think it's a call to be like, let's start flogging
yeah,
ourselves. But it speaks maybe into the human experience as to how the
yeah.
human experience is formed and molded. In your in that particular moment, you 20 years old, which is so young. I mean,
Yeah, I know, it's so young. You feel so, you feel like a grown up, but
I know. And there is, I mean, and this is not to underestimate people's youth. This is not to speak into that,
true.
but it's to comment as we look back on it. This is almost a decade ago. As we look back on that and we think and we reflect on that, and we say, yes, we are grown-ups in that moment. We're always going to be grown-ups, but grown-ups that are going to have more growing up to do, and that is
Yeah.
perfectly okay. Do you feel that in if for example, and this is to idealize a little bit, but do you feel without that experience in particular, before we go on to another topic, but without that
Yeah.
experience that you reference, I don't know, play an imagination game here. How
Mhm.
different perhaps would you be as a person right now?
I To this I kind of immediately thought that I've been doing a little bit of acting, the last few years, and that comes with performing. And acting has been such a mirror. It's such a self-reflecting. It's a mirror straight to your face, and you can't so badly want to hold on to some ego. You kind of so badly want to perform and be put on the show, but you can't do it. You can't be authentic if you don't open up
Hmm.
everything and everything that belongs in there. And it's extremely difficult because you don't want to be that vulnerable. But at that moment I found a part of me, a side of me that I didn't know that I had. I kind of rather level leveled kind of as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
and positive and often happy, I guess. But there was this craziness also that I felt definitely for the first time. I'd possibly used that a little bit in the football the years before, and since then, when I'm working maybe with a director and you need to really get into the shape of something that completely different that you are not, then I sometimes, if I would not have experienced that, I wouldn't know that I had that side of myself.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You're becoming more holistic,
Yeah,
more in
exactly.
tune with
Yeah,
yourself.
definitely. We are many layers, and that was definitely a chance to explore that completely different side of my color facet or what that was. So
You
so
know,
I'm actually very thankful for that. That was really afterwards. It's pretty cool, kind of.
the 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 part of your life um, where you get to, and a little bit of you being, I think not a little bit, but a big part of it, you being in the U.S. was, being in that tour with Björk.
Hmm.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. It's been some years. It's been some years since then. And
Yes.
other than the magnificent part that you got to meet me, I mean, out of that
Yeah.
tour, that aside, which in and of itself is a magnificent, glorious thing.
Absolutely.
And because those who we don't know, both well, not both, Kristín, Gia and Gia, I actually got to meet them in Puerto Rico. Initially I met
Yeah.
Gia and Gia, great friends of ours, and
Yes.
I met them in the old city of San Juan in Puerto Rico, and it just kind of speaks us to the randomness of life. It's just random
Hmm.
strangers to meet each other, but this
Yeah.
great friendship struck. This great,
Yeah.
beautiful friendship struck, and
Yeah.
but it happened as you and Gia were part of this tour, which was, I'm
Yeah.
assuming, a very new thing in your lives. So tell us a
Yeah.
bit, tell us a little bit about that. How did that brew up? When people actually, one of the first things I asked Gia
Yeah.
and Gia was about, when I found out they were from Iceland, I asked them about
Yeah.
Siguros, or in Emiliano Torrini, and every single artistic musical act that I knew, and one of them was Bjork. So
Yeah.
people who I'm sure people who meet you outside of your natural Icelandic setting were probably maybe associate. Oh, you're from Iceland. Oh, you think of Bjork and whatnot. But how did this brew up? How did you guys kind of ended into that tour? What
Yeah.
was everything that pieced up? And then
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
through that experience as well.
Okay, that it's actually kind of a simple story. We grew up in this kind of a church choir school. It wasn't very religious, I would say. It was in this church here in Reykjavik called Langholtskirkja, which has great music life. And I grew up in Sweden actually until I was 8. And I guess also talking about moments that shape your life. Okay, just a little bit of backstory.
Yeah,
I
yeah, go
think
for it.
it's
Go
cute.
for it.
Yeah, I grew up in Sweden and I had absolutely wonderful youth there. And when I moved to Iceland, it was exciting, and I had my I have family here, but I was also a little bit heartbroken. I missed Sweden so much, and there was this one song that I sang constantly, and actually sang it in front of mirror, and I just cried, and it was just missed Sweden a lot. And it's a song called "Vem kan segla," and uh, and it's about who can who can sail without wind, and who can row without
The rose, the roar, yeah.
the rose. Yeah, who can part from a friend without falling tears? And then you answer, I can sail without a wind, and I can roar without roars, but I cannot part from a friend without um,
Oh wow.
tears falling. It's extremely beautiful, and it's such a gorgeous song. And me and my mom, we were actually in a bus in Iceland shortly after we had moved home. And there were these few girls that walk into the bus and they start singing this song. And it was kind of my song, but I sang it day in and a day out. And my mom, she asks them where they come from, and they say, "Oh, we sing in this choir." So she thinks of putting me into this choir, and I did not want to be a part of that. A choir was not something that I was going to do, but I stayed there until I moved to Germany, basically. So that is a choirs. Basically, some of my friends, I guess one of the Gias started at 5 or 4, and then you go on until you're grown up, kind of. and you kind of you go on until 18, and then you kind of can get selected into this choir called Gradule Nobili, which is then girls from 18 to 24, and we were all in this choir together. And at that point, we had won some international competitions or gotten second and third place also. And we had traveled a lot together. We had made a lot of CDs, and we had basically grown up together since we were small, sung incredibly much together. And Björk basically asked around and heard about us, and she needed a choir for this project. And it was only supposed to be sing a few songs on her album, which then became kind of the whole album in the end. And then it became, oh, can come with me on the first concert tour, which will be Manchester for 4 or 5 weeks. So we did that, and it was never supposed, we never got the deal, you know, this is going to be the next 2-3 years of your lives. It was always like the next stop is actually then in North America, and then could be some Central America after that, and then we go south. So it always got longer and longer, and in the end there was this whole experience. But yeah, so we were a choir, 18 to 24 years old, and what was our plus definitely and our strength was that we knew each other so well, and we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we could work then extremely well together. So yeah, that was definitely different, a different music, of course, from what we had been doing before. But it was really, really cool.
What are some just to get this question out of the way?
Yeah.
Did you at that point follow much of Bjork's career? I mean, other than maybe your
Mm,
obligation as a person who lives in Iceland to do so. I don't know if there is such an obligation, but
yeah.
were you familiar with her music to
Yeah.
to an extent, or?
Yeah, yes and no. Like you said, I guess just like an Icelander is, she is of course extremely known, and but she is kind of more known abroad, in a way.
Internationally, yeah.
Yes, and that was definitely for all of us, and it is a little bit for every Icelander when we step abroad and everyone asks us about Björk, that we realize how big she actually is. You know her standards and things like that, um, but it was, yeah, and her standards are maybe like 10 to 15 songs that you would really know. But I had never gone completely into her career before that, and then I was really absolutely amazed, and also traveling to all of these countries and seeing her fan base, and also the respect that she has from other artists was one of the most beautiful things I've seen on festivals, for example. The other artists, because we very often, she very often was the headline of the festival, that she kind of stepped on the stage the latest or at the main point of the evening. And the other artists, the bands and the singers, they waited because they wanted to know what she was going to bring. That doesn't mean that they are fans, but they have had such respect for her, and it was so
Yeah.
gorgeous to see. And they very often waited, and then we met them all and had a beautiful night then after that. So because she's so innovative and she goes her own ways, and she is, just for that, she's just such an amazing artist, and I definitely didn't realize that how big she was before that.
And the reason part of the reason I asked that question is
Mm.
to get a feel of what your perspective of her was before you go into this tour and recording with her. So, having asked that question, what are some interesting or anecdotal moments that you might remember, whether it be behind the scenes recording or sharing stage with her, with a very eccentric figure as Bjork is, as an artist and also as a person. I think she conveys this mystery.
Absolutely, and she always did. And I mean, there's also, yeah, first of all, maybe the when we were studying the music with her, which was of course very interesting. There was like maybe 18 different voices and everyone doing something. It was very,
Wow.
it was, yeah, it was really cool, and her whole vision of the music was so different. And but we definitely took her kind of into our environment just in the church. She came and watched our rehearsals, and then we always had this slaughter, I don't know what it's called, and it's just a very special Icelandic dish that we always had because we had rehearsals on Sundays, and she just became a part of that. So she was in our little world, which is a little bit like I don't know, silly or what it is. And then later we start the recordings, and then we meet the crew, and then there's all kinds of international people and all her agents and everything, and we just kind of like, yes. And then there starts coming up TV shows in New York and London, and we are sharing that we were with Red Hot Chili Peppers in Jules
Wow.
Holland, and that was one of the first thing we did, I think. And it was just like, wait, that was kind of, one of these
Surreal.
moments. Yeah, because I really think that might have been one of the first things we did. I can't really remember. So all of a sudden, the dynamic shifted. We weren't just in our small little room in the church eating those things. She was a superstar, and we got such respect just for being with her, um, but also kind of talking about humanity. I think these moments on these festivals that I luckily absorbed and I took in. It was just this very simple thing of, what is it called when the sun is going down? This golden
Sunset.
hour.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I think it's the golden hour that I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The concert starts and it's daytime, and then there's this hour when it's something in between,
Mm.
and there's this ocean of people, and everyone is together in this amazing space. And there was very often this fiery thing that were left, and it was just this absolute happiness from everyone, and this energy that everyone shared together. If it was it was usually if everything is going well and things like that. And that moment to feel such a to realize what you're actually part of, those moments were really strong, because that's where you're like, I saw myself from outside and also from the inside, and in every way. I guess some kind of a thankfulness for how insane, how crazy that was. You feel every person in that room, and everyone is sharing this
Wow.
experience, which, by the way, also leaves, of course, a little bit when people start recording. And this was in years 2011 to 2013. So the smartphones were starting, and iPads and everything. So of
Yes.
course that creates a little bit of wall between. But so we got a little bit of both, actually.
Yes, you
Um,
mentioned that, and that was a time where that transition was happening, was the
yeah,
transition of living, living experiences through our phones or our tablets,
yeah,
um,
exactly,
safeguarding ourselves from the experience that is actually unfolding, and
exactly.
and and being and kind of conforming ourselves through the generic moments of the real experience. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know, I
that's
know.
a,
It's weird. Yeah,
it's you know, talking about traveling and as you mentioned, you experience parts of Latin America,
yeah,
parts of Europe, parts of North America. Um, when you're traveling as a backpacker on your own, you can kind of accommodate your experiences more or less. But
yeah,
you're traveling this tour, you're subjected to this. So there's obviously, I'm assuming there's some pros and cons. And how do you, how do you best remember this experience of your life, and being younger than you are now? How do you remember perhaps these new countries you were in, where they spoke different languages, you met different people?
Mhm.
How did you strike a balance between the obligations that you had to do and your free time? And how do you? And I guess the specific question is, how do you remember those moments of free time that might, that might have left some tiny bit of an everlasting impact in you, in each of these countries? I understand you went to Brazil,
Yeah.
some other countries. Do you, in that balancing act of performing and also being a person with a real life,
Yeah.
um, how how did you balance that? And do you gather experiences that, even though were probably limited, that were significantly maybe transformative, that were, new smells, new visuals, new tastes that you're welcoming into your paradigm of life?
Yeah. Well,
A little
for that,
disclaimer, my questions tend to be all over the place, so if you haven't noticed that.
no, no, that's awesome. I mean, first of all, this tour was a little bit special in the way that it was kind of two parted. One part was that we had like residency concerts where we stayed 3 to 5 weeks in each cities.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, um, that wasn't always the case, but that was sometimes and usually the case. So we stayed in New York, and Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and Paris, and all kinds of Tokyo, all kinds of cities for
Wow.
such a long time. And there you kind of definitely was not as glamorous as the festivals would then be. Like then they would be on 5-star hotels, and that would be super fast everything. But in these residencies we had concerts every third day, and so you had kind of, we shared apartments, a few of us together, depended on each different in each city. But you went to the laundromat to clean your clothes. You went to grocery shop to shop. We didn't always go to a restaurant. So it was definitely a little bit slower there. You could like work a little bit on your own, and um, so you could try to live a little bit like a local in those residencies, in a way. Um,
Do you have particular memories, perhaps, of these instances where things slow down a little bit more? You make the contrast of festivals and a bit of a
yeah,
glamour, and I'm sure that's excitable and stuff. But at least in my perspective, I'm so far more interested in those slower times.
slower times. The thing is that they were slow, but they weren't that slow also. So
Hmm.
um yeah, I don't know, it was definitely different, but it was just these average these average things of exactly just going to the grocery stores and those moments at the laundromat. That was gorgeous, that was awesome. It was really so cool. And in Tokyo, I remember I just ate so much rice and some things that it was really just some cheap things from the grocery store in Tokyo. And I
Is that
look
a
back,
good thing or a bad thing? You're putting this face. I don't
I,
know if you're mentioning like
I
a
don't
great
know.
thing.
I don't know. I sometimes think back, and I've been learning. So you hear so many of the fantastic things that you can eat in Tokyo, and I was like, I was just always making this little rice thing, And I was like, why wasn't I
That's
even moving?
fantastic rice.
Yeah. So, but actually, so we kind of got a pretty cool balance there and then every third day there was this crazy concert all of a sudden, and there's maybe this
Hmm.
crazy after party, and then again the day after came, and you just, yeah, okay, I guess I need to clean the apartment, and things like that. So that was definitely an interesting thing. But meeting you in Puerto Rico, there we actually had a break. That was we had maybe 2 weeks off between New York and South or Central America. I don't remember where the next stop was, but there we were on our own. Then we were backpacking, and
It's true.
yeah, so that was not, that part especially was not part of the tour, and that was such a different story, and that was so pure in a way. Also meeting you, just a local kind of, that just completely took her in like us in like this
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you guys were probably wondering what the is this the normal Puerto Rican standard.
a little bit. Yeah, I remember it because they met you first. Yeah, exactly. The two guías, they met you, and I wasn't with that night. And they were like, we met these two guys because it was also Roberto or Robert.
Roberto and Abner, yeah.
Yeah, he was also with you. And I was like, yeah. And then they were like, we're meeting him tomorrow. And then we were doing this together. And then we just traveled with you. And that was
As you would have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was then very authentic experience. And we had that again a few months later, where we were supposed to do a festival in Brazil. And Björk, yeah, that was actually also a thing that Björk, she got knots on her vocal cords. So we were in Argentina, I think, and then we just got an email, Björk is gone. You know, she's having a, she needs to take a break or something. You can choose if you're going to go fly home to Iceland or if you're going to continue, but then kind of on your own. And we decided to continue and do backpack in Brazil. And that was then, then you could just completely throw to the other side. And so we got these three experiences, kind of the backpacking and then the residencies and then the high end, the festivals. It was very interesting to see, but when those countries where we did the festivals, I definitely feel like I need to go to those countries again to really feel, the heartbeat of the population and the society and everything.
As we start kind of like lining this interaction, I also want to converse a little bit about where you are in life right now. You did these travels, part of the choir, part of this quite well-known eccentric performer, world renowned, and now you're formalizing even more your career and your profession as a performer in the world of opera, which to me is a totally foreign world.
Yeah.
I probably have known maybe two other people other than you that are performers, and maybe when I say two, I might be exaggerating. It might just be one. But that speaks to me. That doesn't speak as to the volume of operatic performers. Talk a little bit. If you can walk us a little bit through that. What got you? Just quite briefly, as you feel comfortable to share. What got you into that realm of the theatric singing and opera? Walk us a little bit through that.
I know. I get you.
You can be a pop singer. Why are you not a pop singer? I'm sure there's numerous reasons why.
I know where you come from, and I was there myself, kind of, and it definitely all comes from the choir that I was singing in. It's a big percentage of us are classical singers today, and there are also girls that were on the tour at the time. So it was kind of it was a classical choir, definitely. The choir conductor, he is not alive today, but he was married to a very well-renowned opera singer here in Iceland, and through the choir we got singing lessons on the side, also some theory lessons, so we always got vocally trained, and it's kind of like a good standard there, definitely, on the choir. I was a little bit put into that lane. It was his suggestion that I would go on, study more, go on to this singing school where his wife was teaching. So I was kind of, there was a way that led me there without, and I kind of a little bit went with the flow. I just have to say, and um, in that way, I struggle a little bit with identifying myself as an opera singer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if it's an imposter syndrome, could be. Maybe also because I'm just on my way of, being something. But I was in high school. I was kind of in a business school, and I was I was just playing football, and then I was on this pop tour. It was it was not the typical way how to become an opera singer.
That's not the way how they usually become opera singers.
No, exactly.
Okay.
And I definitely struggle with that, and I still do, kind of, and trying to use
Mm.
now strength more than not. But we were a strong group of friends, that got this kind of support. We were put into kind of, yeah, I say put into this singing school, and I actually tried to quit quite many times because I didn't feel like I belonged,
Mm.
because I just didn't feel like I had the background of being a classical musician or a singer. I wasn't raised in a classical musical way, kind of, so I didn't know that much about it except my choir experience. And that is, it definitely has haunted me a little bit, and a little bit still does. And I definitely was not going to become an opera singer. No way at all. And then, but that was also in the tour. Um, we had these little breaks every now and then, so you kind of wanted to do something on the side, but you couldn't do really a full study in a university, or you couldn't be working, doing another job or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we could do this a little bit on the side. The singing school was very flexible in that way, so that just became okay. I'm just going to use my time there when I'm in Iceland and where I can and things like that. So when the tour finished, my family had actually moved to Germany, just for private reasons, for work and things like that. So I came home, and they were not living there, um, and I finished a degree there in music school, just because that was kind of what I could do. And then when I finished that, I kind of went through this stage where I was now finally gonna quit the singing, because I'd never saw it really as anything, even though I got a lot of support, and people mentioned this to me quite a lot. So then I was kind of finally gonna go and study political science and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I started that actually in the university, and I wanted to move abroad and study something like that there. Um, so as I had started that study, I get a call from another choir that was kind of working professionally in Iceland, and they were constantly doing something very, very amazing projects. And I realized that as I was sitting there at the university, I got always an SMS, can you come here, sing there? Can you do this there and there and there? And I always went. And I realized, God, this is probably going to be my life, all the time. I'm always trying to do something else, but this always pulls me in somehow. And I was kind of didn't know what else. Like I said, my family was living abroad. Most of my friends, they were applying for schools in Europe, in Wien or Berlin or somewhere in Germany. And it was actually my friend who kind of filled out an application form for me. And I was still saying, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to go a different path. She was going to go to Leipzig. She knew this teacher. And I said, okay, I'll just go with you. It will just be a nice trip, kind of. And then I got in, never would have thought at all. And that was in late July, and the school started beginning of September. And all of a sudden, I just got this, God, I moved to Germany. Like, what?
It's
Leipzig, what city
happening.
even? Yeah, a little bit. And now I have to learn German. And So then all of a sudden I was there, and I definitely my imposter syndrome got just times 100 there, because there I felt like everyone was extremely German, and everyone has just an organist parents, and they have just been
Uh-huh.
conductors all of their life and just been in this classical music world. So I had definitely, it was tough kind of the first few years, and I needed to learn a lot of stuff, and go through like a dive in self-confidence in every way, I would say. But it has been a very interesting experience, and I've had beautiful moments through this experience, and I'm still experiencing it, but
Of course,
very
it's still unfolding. It's
yeah,
still
definitely,
unfolding quite
definitely.
vividly. You tell me this
Yeah,
story, and I'm reminded of
yeah.
this. I'm reminded of this short Netflix series called Unorthodox. I don't know if you've seen it. Is about this young Hasidic Jewish girl,
Yeah,
who, if I'm not mistaken, is living in New York in a very strict Hasidic Jewish community,
yeah,
and she gets married, and she experiences all that goes into that, and all the basically the repression that women in that religious narrative are basically exposed to. And she is she's a musician. She's hidden that part of herself because it was not accepted for women to be in that performing role. So then
hmm,
she goes to, I don't want to go too into it, but you should watch it, but she goes into
yeah.
Berlin. She moves to Berlin, ironically.
Okay,
Um
I've heard about
and it should be still on Netflix. I think is a Netflix production, but it's called Unorthodox.
it. Mm.
And I think you would like it. I think you like how it
Yeah,
unfolds. I think it's quite it could be a bit idyllic at times, but overall, I think they did a pretty good job. And I also, as you were telling me this, as you mentioning about kind of like struggling with coming to terms, or struggling with that you mentioned the word imposter. And I want to
mm,
ask,
mm,
I can't get rid of this thought, because it's, in your realm, it's specific to this context of music. And but I think many of us struggle with that, whether it
yeah,
be in music, it be in our professional career, whether it be just accepting ourselves as a person, as people
yeah,
of dignity. And of course, that with each person, that could have a very different, a very different complex reason for being that way. It could be the way we were raised, it could be traumas, it could be whatever, a
yeah.
whole different series
Mhm.
of universal experiences. But I think it's worthy of maybe sharing, if you have, and if you will, how have you been navigating that? Because the feeling of inadequacy, or the feeling of feeling inadequate,
Mhm.
is not so nice. It's not,
No,
it kind of strips us when we don't want to
yeah,
be stripped.
exactly, yeah.
How have you, I mean, I've done therapy with some of the things I've been going through. Have you done therapy? Have you underwent or undergone experiences that have helped you to
Yeah,
realize? I mean, there's some people that go through tough love. People, so maybe they have friends that tell them,
yes.
you're full of shit. You don't need to think of that, because you're completely worthy. You're
Yeah,
completely adequate.
yeah,
But I don't know what, maybe as you go through this, what has probably helped you regain empowering sentiments of feeling of over yourself, and to
yeah.
overcome
To
moment by
overcome that,
moment.
I'm definitely still in the process of that, but I think it's a little bit difficult to answer it in
What are
one
some
word.
things that maybe have helped you?
Yeah.
or just or moments that you remember that you're like that some kind of little magic happens, or maybe
Yeah.
you have particular people that you have surrounded yourself by
Yeah.
or with that
Yeah.
have
And
added a lot to help you navigate that.
yeah, so many things. I think I could talk about this topic probably for hours.
You can give us
I
the
mean,
summarized
maybe
version.
maybe just the going back, the reason why there was such a fire, through all these years. I was always the one singing, and I enjoyed so much singing when I was growing up here in the choirs, and there was such extreme happiness that came there. So there was always this little spark in there somewhere that you can easily lose that a little bit when it gets too complicated. Um, and then I started living with my boyfriend in Germany just half a year after I moved in there. We have definitely gone through this a little bit hand in hand. He has a kind of his strengths where I have my weaknesses, and the other way around. But he has definitely, we've gone through this together a lot. But I have to say, I did my bachelor's. It was 4 years, and I sometimes think of that as walking through a rose bush. That was literally my feeling, or walking constantly against a wall, or like hamster is in a hamster wheel.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't even
Yeah.
in the hamster wheel. I was just somewhere for trying to get in the hamster wheel. you know
Okay.
so it was just some, I don't even know what that was, but I was learning a lot on the way, and there was always this red line. There was the music, and sometimes that was really magic. I took a little bit, kind of a half a year off, where I was then singing a little bit here in the Icelandic opera, and I went here to Iceland for a few months, and I kind of there, I guess, hit both a high and a low in this case, and I just realized, my goodness, I need to work on these things. I need to really now. I read. I need to, I need to start some work here. So I started seeing a therapist then, talking about this, and getting a little bit of distance then from, for example, Leipzig, which has been this tiny little world, kind of. Um, it's a gorgeous thing, but it's such a small little place, and it has so many forms, and you try to fit in that tiny little form, but you don't really fit, and it's difficult, but you're stepping one step back and realizing that it's just a tiny little, and taking the good things from that, but
Mm.
also taking the good things from everything that you are, and taking a little bit time for myself, and realizing I found myself, I gathered myself a little bit again after in these few months then that I had here in Iceland. I remember coming back to Leipzig and feeling so much more as a whole human being. And then I had a few fantastic, very good performances where, like, acting wise, I could just be completely free. And then just realizing that everything you are as a human being, kind of every aspect, also the football side of myself, or just the business school that I was in, just that, or the tour, or my friends, or my relationships, that is all a part of who I am, and that is a strength. It's a strength not to have being gone the organist way, and only learning about Bach necessarily. So just to kind of learn to put all of this together, and to make myself stronger for it, and not taking myself down for it. Criticism has been, of course, is a huge part of it. This whole experience, you're trying to be strong. You're trying to stand for yourself, stand with yourself, but you're constantly being criticized. That definitely has taken a lot of work, and with that comes a lot of self work, both that and self reflecting, also just also in communication with others, and how you take and how you see yourself and how you see your self worth. So it's a lot of factors. I'm sorry, it's also a little bit of a gray answer, but I would say what I have learned, and mostly in what I'm still learning, is to use my, I guess, my different sides and my different interests as a strength in all of this.
And yeah, absolutely no need to apologize because
Mhm.
that speaks quite organically into life. I mean,
Yeah,
there's far much more gray areas than the blacks and the whites, and I think
exactly.
that's it's coming to terms with that can help us so much, you know. And I think maybe the locking ourselves, or maybe in even as we acknowledge that life is not black and white, sometimes we become sequestered into that mindset, into that reality, and maybe
Yes.
that speaks into, for example, you're not feeling that you fit in, you know. And that's
Yeah.
I've experienced the same thing, you know, like
Yeah.
that tendency to compare ourselves to the other.
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and there's such a beauty in coming to terms. And that's something that, for example, watching, I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Rogers, but watching Mr. Rogers, this very well known educator for many, many years in the US context, but I guess quite internationally renowned. I actually keep him here with me. Um,
Oh, I recognize the face, but I can't say that I know him. Why?
so
Because I like you.
so he has, you know, there was actually recently a movie released where Tom Hanks played his a biopic film.
No.
So he was constantly reassuring kids, you know, in his education program, where he said, and he was a musician as well. He was a
Mm,
very well trained musician,
yeah.
and he would sing onto them, you know, I like you as you are. I like you, not those things beside you, not the toys around
Yeah.
you. I like you
Exactly. Who
as
you
you
are as
are.
a soul, who you are as a spirit,
There's
kind of.
no other being like you because you are meant to be
Yeah.
you. And I think to acknowledge that, which might seem like a small thing, it is so not a small thing to instill children into that path of
Yeah.
self-acceptance and
Yeah.
self-assurance, and to realize that we're not instilling in them arrogance, we're not instilling them a feeling of egocentrism, we're instilling them a feeling of empowerment, a feeling of knowing that we go back to the thing we mentioned before about performance, that we
Hmm.
don't need to base each other off of performing, of what we look like, but of being.
Yes,
Being is the
exactly.
hard thing, to be
Yes.
present,
I know.
being in that moment.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think that as we navigate life in each and every one of our contexts, I think that's a mantra that that we should we should embrace, to try to be, and and to realize that it isn't about doing backflips, about the hair, about the
Yeah.
makeup,
Yeah.
but to be in that present moment. And I think
Yeah.
as we maybe unravel what that entails and what that looks like, I think that could set us off into this very real, beautiful experience. Um, because then we're gonna start looking at everyone else in a different way, and then we'll
Yeah.
realize all these things that we have never realized about other people because we have been so far busy looking at their outer shell.
Yeah.
And then we see this wonderful thing that emanates from them. And then we're
Yes.
like, holy shit, this is amazing. I've been missing out on this for so long.
I
But
know.
many
Yeah.
people don't realize it
No.
in their six, seven, eight
Exactly.
decades of life.
Yeah. I have to give Germany or Leipzig credit in this way. I feel like they are a lot more like this, at least to what I my experience was in Iceland. We live faster here in Iceland, I guess, and in Germany they're just in Leipzig. Germany is different, and
See,
they
see,
have
see,
their
see.
own things. You know, you need to adjust there as well a lot. Um, but in Leipzig, there's a lot of people quite laid back. They see you as who you are. They're not going to judge you by your outfit or your how you present yourself in the world. Um, they're gonna judge you for who you are, and that I came. That was new for me because in Iceland you kind of you are you're constantly building your name a little bit, and maybe you're born into a certain family and everyone knows everything about you. You know, it's extremely sad, of course, but you have a little bit of a reputation that you need to guard, and you need to guard your ego a little bit. But in Leipzig, you know, people just wanna see you, and they wanna hear what you have to say, and they are not gonna take any bullshit or any performance or any you know any shield or anything. And they're also very direct. They say, and they will tell you, you know. So that was a whole, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it, and they're a lot less materialistic than I was also used to in my surroundings. And but I definitely took some time getting used to 100%.
I'm
Um,
thinking about Iceland and about Puerto
yeah.
Rico, you know, the island
Yes.
element.
You
And,
probably, yeah,
and
exactly.
it could be. I mean, there's these are not identical parallels, but I think it comments
Hmm.
maybe into that feeling of distinguishing. I want to distinguish myself. Maybe that feeling of isolation, that feeling of being in an island could play into it. Maybe could play. This is just me out of the top of my
100%.
head.
No,
Could
100%.
because I think about
Yeah.
Puerto Ricans, those things are quite parallel and similar
Yeah.
reputation.
I think it's
Um,
true. Yeah. People are gonna you do something and that is gonna stick a little bit with you, and that is then difficult not to care what other things with what other people think. But then you're in a bigger place and you just fall into the mass, and no one cares, and who are you to say that? And you know you're
that
it's
is
very interesting, but
that
it's
is a
really cool.
that is a worthy thing of noticing and observing, and that's one of the rich things about when you experience not just travel as a tourist,
Yeah.
but experience life in different
Yeah.
settings. You know, and I I don't speak the language German, and
Yeah.
but I can attest to experiences quite similar to that which you mentioned.
Yeah.
That straightforwardness, that
Yes, exactly.
candid,
They're
and I
just
appreciate that. I
telling you
really
on
do.
your street, and you're just like, yeah, yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, why are you yelling at me? I'm just doing my best, you know. But yeah,
Yeah.
and also that has been a lesson for me to speak my mind, and you know, and not just. And they tell me, don't be such a don't. You're so nice, you know. Stop being so nice.
Mm,
And then I'm like, yeah, well, I was raised to be nice. Like, what? You
yeah.
know,
I think I
it's
think
very
it's
interesting.
I think it would be a great balance to strike, you know, because you don't want to be an asshole or a jerk,
Yeah, exactly.
but to not hold things back, to
Yeah,
take to humanize that sincerity,
yeah,
not completely distance it from hey, we're human beings, we have feelings. Don't just say the first thing that comes to your head, but
yeah,
to strive for honest, deeper relationships. I
exactly.
think that would be a good
Oh
little
yeah.
to do, a task to have at hand.
100%, 100%. I also, you know, before one thing that was in the tour, and also in my lifetime before that, I was always a part of a team, of a whole, and that was maybe the most difficult thing in the tour, that you're always a part of such a big mass, which was gorgeous, but there wasn't really space for your critical thinking or your big voice. You needed to constantly, I think that, but let's just keep it grounded a little bit. And then all of a sudden being in Germany, here I am, and here now I'm supposed to be an opera singer, and here I am, look at my, I don't know, you're supposed to be a diva all of a sudden and everything. So all of a sudden that was so egoistic, and you needed to be a one person and not identify yourself from a group. So that has also been a whole school in process.
To bring this super fun dialogue to a
Yeah.
close,
Yeah.
I want to, before anything, thank you so much, Christine,
Well,
porque
thank you.
I value this. I value you as a friend. And this space, I think this is I mean, it's just been a fun conversation. I've gotten to
Yeah.
know you way more than I knew you
Yes.
yesterday.
Yes. After all of these years, it's awesome to meet again.
So if you want to get to know me more, you have to start your own your own program and then bring me in, and then you get to know me more.
Definitely. Definitely. Because I do want to hear about your whole. Yeah, we have plenty in common. I think that I want to hear about.
It's something I talk about in this space is about utopias. These references, the utopia, that which we might refer to as an idyllic reference point of a better world, of a better existence. No, la utopia.
Okay.
Is there what's the word for utopia in Icelandic?
I
Or
don't
is it
really
the same?
know. I don't really know. I don't know the word very well, so I'm just taking your explanation.
So
That is now all I know about it.
utopia is basically this perfect place, and
Yeah,
and
okay.
and
An
and
ideal world kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And when we and the approach I give it in these talks, it's basically not. I'm not talking about Disney World or that type of. I'm talking about like a grounded, more just, more socially equitative, a fairer existence.
Yeah.
Where there's no here and no here. There's no one on top of the other. Like this commonplace. And there's this author, this Spanish author, Eduardo Galeano, this Hispanic author. And he's attributed for this quote. It wasn't his quote, but
Mm.
I really don't know who the originator of this quote is. He's talking about, I think it's a classroom setting, and they're talking about the utopia, that place
Yeah.
far out
Yeah.
in the horizon, and
Mm-hmm.
then they're talking about moving towards it, taking 5 steps, but then you realize that the utopia takes 5 steps even further, and then you take five
Yes.
more
Okay.
steps, and
You
then it
can't
takes
never
five
reach
five
it.
steps is
Yes.
unattainable. So then the student asks, so then what was this bullshit? What is the point of utopia? It's
Yeah.
unattainable. He's like,
Yeah.
well, it is to continue pressing
Right.
forward, to
Yeah.
continue moving forward,
To moving. Yeah.
to
Exactly.
move you. So
Yeah.
what are references for you in life that keep you moving towards utopia?
Yeah.
What are things that keep you moving forward?
Um. I feel sometimes when I think about setting yourself goals and things like that, I my mainly goal is usually just myself and just being better at being myself, kind of. It usually isn't very grandiose or but just becoming a better version of what I do and who I am. And exactly like you said, the more you learn, the more there is kind of to do and to learn. So that has been a whole, and through that, through just thinking that small and just in my own space, you kind of, okay, yeah, then you can also be better socially, and then you gather, or you can be better as a human in a humanitarian way, and then you gather more people in that. So there's this kind of just being constantly aware of always progressing, that I without having a special goal in mind, just kind of be a little bit better today than tomorrow than you're today in a little bit every way, hopefully. And I guess that is my answer, and I guess that doesn't sound too egoistic, because I think in the way you do better for the world, and that can be sustainable, be more sustainable and then the way that opens up that whole prospect of the earth and how we live, and all of these things. So I guess that is how I think. I've sometimes thought, why don't I think more goal orientated, or why is there not this one treasure box that I need to get to? But it's just, I really think in the small steps, I think, and I try to make them, and sometimes that means going all the way down all of a sudden, but that is also a part of the process and the steps. Yeah, does that answer the question?
No, it does not.
Maybe not.
Hey, no, it definitely does. It gives your perspective, and it gives your the voyage of your pilgrimage, that is that continuous search and that continuous motioning. So gracias, thank you, Dankeschön,
Dankeschön, thank you.
Kristín. It's been a pleasure. I definitely hope that we can have this conversation again in a more personal, face-to-face scenario, hopefully in Deutschland, maybe.
But we met. What was it, in San Francisco again, or was it somewhere?
Yes, the last time we saw each other was 7 years ago, a little over 7 years. It was May 2013.
Yeah,
That
but
was...
you tend to pop up in all kinds of places. You've also been to Iceland. I missed you there, and
I know.
Yeah, so I do think it's not going to be very very long until
I have a, given that historical account. Yes, it does seem like it is bound to happen soon. With everything happening now, there's adds some complexities. But pragmatically speaking, maybe I think sooner than later, probably we shall see each other in Deutschland. Maybe I look forward, and then we can cross mark every place that we find each other in the U.S. We got Puerto Rico, Germany. We got to see each other in Iceland. That has to happen.
It has to happen on the way from Texas, or where you are. That will be to Germany. You will meet.
See, I know I should stop the little pit stop there. Why not? I mean, it's idyllic. That's idyllic. Yeah. So, gracias for this time. Thank you to everyone that stopped by and watched, tuned in. Thank you so much. Whatever time zone you're in. Good evening, good morning, whomever watches later on, because this is going to be set here. So whomever is watching also, thank you for watching. Really, thank you. I'm grateful. Kristín is a formidable human being, and I don't know. Are there any things that you're doing, or any social medias that you're doing that people should look out? That any projects coming up, maybe that you would like to share before we head out, in this time of cancellation, I know, but anything that is to be determined perhaps later on that you want to share that is coming end of year, maybe next year?
I don't think, nothing for now. There's everything has been postponed for a year, basically. So in 2021, there's some hope, but you'll see.
To be determined for next year.
Yes.
We're crossing fingers that 2021 will be a little bit less adventurous than this year.
I hope so. Yeah.
So, Kristín, take care. Good evening.
Too.
I like to close off with the words of Walter Mercado, who is a famous Puerto Rican astrologer, has a Netflix documentary called Mucho, Mucho Amor, which you should watch. And he always used to close his segment saying, que tenga mucha paz y mucho amor. So, people, thank you. Adios, hasta luego.
Thank you.
Don't disconnect. I'll disconnect and then. So, adios, amigos y amigas.